On this episode of Forever Spinning, we take a trip through Queensbridge, New York, as we look at one of the most prolific hip-hop records ever, Nas's Illmatic. Nas had always known that he wanted to be a rapper from a very young age. During his teenage years, Nas, who at the time went by the name Kid Wave and later changed it to Nasty Nas, worked his tail off to achieve his dream. His neighbor and best friend, Willie Ill Will Graham, was one of the first people to turn Nas onto hip-hop, as they would constantly hang out together and listen to records. The bond and musical understanding between these two grew and grew over time, so much so that Nas ended up asking Ill Will if he would be his DJ. And at the age of 15, Nas and Ill Will, with a handful of tracks that they had recorded, decided to set out and find themselves a record contract, as hip-hop was a hot-selling commodity in the music industry. It was during this time that the two met Large Professor, a producer who was only living a few neighborhoods away in Flushing, Queens. Large Professor liked what he heard with Nas, so much so that he ended up offering to record a track with him alongside of Large Professor's group, Main Source. They first recorded a verse for Live at the Barbecue off of Main Source's Breaking Atoms album, and later Large Professor would also help to record Nas's first single, Halftime, a track that would appear on Illmatic. While things seemed to be looking up for Nas, tragedy struck one night when Ill Will was shot and killed in Queensbridge. That same night, Nas's brother was also shot, although he did survive the shooting. Nas has gone on record to say that this night was a, quote, wake-up call for him. And from that night forward, things seemed to be looking up for Nas. He began working with DJ Premier, who would actually help to produce most of Illmatic. MC Search, one of the biggest reasons Nas got signed to a record label in the first place, recounts the chemistry between Nas and DJ Premier. He said, quote, "They could have been separated at birth. It wasn't one of those situations where the beat fit the rhyme, they fit each other." And this is clearly evident of how successful, both critically and commercially, this album was after its release. Alongside DJ Premier, producers Q-Tip, Large Professor, LES, and Pete Rock filled out the rest of the producing roles for this record. And the name Illmatic mostly comes from his best friend Ill Will, although it also allegedly comes from one of Nas's friends, Illmatic Ice, who was in prison at the time. Nas spent much of 1992 and 1993 recording in various studios such as Battery Studio, Unique Studios, Chung King Studios, and D&D Recordings, all of which are located throughout New York. Finally, after much anticipation from the hip-hop community, Nas released Illmatic on April 19th, 1994 on Columbia Records. The first single to be released from Illmatic, as stated earlier in this video, was Halftime on October 13th, 1992. This track obviously came out long before the album did, as it was originally just supposed to be a single with production from Large Professor. The instrumental itself was constructed by Large Professor, sampling tracks like Dead End by Japanese Haircast, Schoolboy Crush by Average White Band, and Soul Travelin' Part 1 by Gary Bird. The beat was actually originally offered to Busta Rhymes, but as he recalls, he, quote, didn't know what to do with it. He later regretted this decision after hearing Nas on the track. The lyrics in this song are dark, gritty, and incredibly real as Nas dives into his own psyche to describe the broken world that he was living in. Some of his most memorable bars from the entire album come off of this track. One of my favorites being King Poetic, Too Much Flavor, I'm Major, Atlanta Ain't Braver, I'll Pull a Number Like a Pager. It is an incredibly impressive first single. So Nas released a total of 5 singles from this album, which is actually half of the track list. And instead of going over the other 4, I'm only going to pick 2 and run with that because this video is going to be long enough as it is. With that being said, the next single is Life's a Bitch featuring AZ, which was released the same day the album was released, April 19th, 1994. This song was produced by LES and samples Yearning for Your Love by the Gap Band and Black Frost by Grover Washington Jr. The lyrics of this infamous track are dark and existential as Nas and AZ preach how hard and unfulfilling life can be, especially growing up in Queensbridge. As amazing as Nas is on this track, it's AZ who really steals the show with one of the greatest verses in hip-hop history according to the legend Talib Kweli. He opens up this remarkable verse with visualizing the realism of life in actuality. fuck who's the baddest, a person's status depends on salary, and my mentality is money orientated. I'm destined to live the dream for all my peeps who never made it. I mean, god damn, just those 4 bars alone are drowning in sadness and the sad realization that life is completely unfair. The last single I would like to talk about is The World Is Yours, and this would be the 4th single that Nas released from this album on May 31st, 1994. This track was produced by Pete Rock, and it samples I Love Music by Ahmad Jamal, and also uses an interpretation of It's Yours by T. La Rock, which is in the chorus. This song and its accompanying music video reference the film Scarface, and the song itself has become ground zero for some of the most prolific themes and lines in hip-hop. For instance, the lines about collecting dead presidents didn't start with Nas, as it did originate with Rakim's Paid in Full, but Nas's lines have been sampled by a countless number of artists, from Jay-Z, Lil Wayne, Logic. Much like the rest of this album, The World Is Yours is critically hailed to be one of the greatest hip-hop songs of all time due to its influence and its timelessness. There is no true objective way to say what is the greatest hip-hop album of all time. People have tried to do this by combing through analytics, by measuring, the complexity of rhymes, words used, critical score, or even album sales. But this is not the full story. I know it, you know it, and even the people trying to determine the answer to this unsolvable question know it. All that we have are our feelings, our own opinions. And opinions change because we change. We develop, we grow, we mature, and with that, the music that we listen to and the music that we like also changes. Or they just simply don't. And that's okay, because there is no definite or correct answer to this question. But with all of this being said, I have to admit, right now, in this time and place, the day that I'm recording this, Nas's Illmatic is the greatest hip-hop album ever, in my opinion. I just cannot think of any other record that fully through I can listen to in so many different ways. It's so multifaceted. For instance, if I just simply want to jam out or relax, I can do it with this record. If I'm in the need to feel something while I listen to an album, this record can get it done too. And if I want to make a video history essay studying an album and talking about the importance and pure genius of it, this record does it. I mean, obviously, I'm doing it right now. This album is more than fulfilling. For Christ's sake, I can make an entire hour-long video just glancing over the tracks and not even diving into what everything means. And sure, there are definitely other records that I could do this for, as I've obviously done in the past, but none of them have felt as good as making this video. So, it's a selfish answer, but all opinions are selfish. Nas's opinions might not connect to everybody, and that's frankly okay, because he doesn't need to do that. He's getting off his chest what he needs to say, and he does so in such a prolific and gorgeous manner. He pens tales like no other MC has done before, and puts it together in such a neat little package on this album. He pours his absolute heart and soul into Illmatic, and part of it is because he wants to, and another part is because he had to at the time, but he did it anyway, and he did it so perfectly. And to me, Illmatic by Nas is the perfect hip-hop album. So, whether you've never heard this record before, or if it is a personal favorite of yours just like it is mine, Nas's Illmatic will always be forever spinning. Thanks for watching.